Many of you that have been following the channel for pretty much any amount of time may know that I love the P2 Volvo XC90. I myself have had two of them and I talk about them all the time. And I've been trying to find every single version of the XC90 and finally we've gotten our hands on one of them that I haven't been able to find until today. I also know that I talk about the V8 all the time, so today we're gonna drop 2 cylinders and talk about an underappreciated but overworked version of the XC90, the XC90 3.2. Now you might be wondering, why would I want to make a video of a more plebeian base model XC90? And that's honestly the reason why. For those of you that may not be as well versed in the world of the XC90, the P2 XC90 went from 2003 all the way to 2014. This was the year before they killed off this generation. But the XC90 did go through several different facelifts with different engines as well. Volvo actually used a 2.5 liter 5-cylinder turbo before they put the 3.2 in the XC90. It made 208 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque. There's a lot of 2.5 XC90s out there, but the 3.2 was introduced in 2007 in one of the mid refreshes for the P2 XC90. This XC90 3.2 in particular does not actually belong to anyone that I know. This actually is another one of the wholesale cars that I used to do videos of, but thanks to my friend Andy for keeping this to the side so we can look at it. But this XC90 in particular is a 2013 XC90 3.2 Premier, and it's got about 130,000 miles on it. In terms of trim levels for these later years of the P2 XC90, because Volvo was weird with their trim levels, they started at the base, of course with the 3.2, then the Premier, Premier Plus, and then the Platinum. You don't see too many Platinums out there, but they have 19-inch wheels called Galatia, my favorite set of wheels on the XC90. The biggest way to differentiate the early models of XC90 and the later models like this one will definitely be the bumpers, especially in the very latest trims, because they'll have painted body cladding on the lower half, and that's what I want to do to mine. The standard headlights are the same, but you can get HIDs on some XC90s, but those are different looking fixtures than this one, along with different taillights and a different rear bumper on the backside of the XC90. Along with the many different trim levels that Volvo offered in the P2 XC90, over the years they did offer many engines as well, but unfortunately the 3.2 was the only engine option after 2012, 2011 and a half to be exact. But today we will continue to be modest with the 3.2. It still is a great engine, and that's why there's so many of these on the road. So today I finally bring to you the B632 4S. It's the engine code for this 3.2 liter transverse mounted inline 6. The hood struts are broken, so I'm going to keep holding this, but it's a great engine. Volvo put this in a lot of things. It's even been shared in the Land Rover LR2, but on the Volvo side of things, of course, it was in the XC90. They also put it in the S80 sedan, the V70 wagon, and the XC70 lifted wagon as well. In this application, it makes 235 horsepower and 235 pound-feet of torque. Very linear power figures, and I'm very curious to see how this drives. I have driven 3.2s, but it's been a little while, especially coming from the V8 now. The reason why a lot of people compare this 6-cylinder to the 8-cylinder and the XC90 is mileage. It's not even that different. Volvo claimed 16 in the city, 23 on the highway, and a combined rating of 19. You'll probably see between 17 and 18 in this, and I see about 16, 17 in my V8. This engine is paired to a 6-speed automatic transmission and Haldex all-wheel drive generation 4. That means that this system is more of a proactive system than a reactive system, so if the front wheels slip, it'll send power to the rear even quicker than older XC90s in the past. But my arm is getting tired, so we can talk about other things now. In the lifespan of the P2, Volvo offered an inconceivable amount of wheel options, not just for the XC90, but all their models in their lineup, in their big catalog. The base wheel for the XC90, especially in 3.2 form, is an 18-inch wheel called Camulus. You'll see a lot of them out there, but you'll also see the ones with these 18-inch alloy wheels, which my old XC90 Thor had, and these are called Situla. It's a nice, modest-looking wheel on the XC90. I liked it on my old one, but again, I really love the Galatias. All of these ride on four-wheel independent suspension, but XC90s could not get air suspension in this generation. Some of them, like mine, because it's a V8 Executive, have auto-leveling rear shocks, but not all of them have that. One of the many reasons that I and many of you love these XC90s is because they're like vans, but cooler. First of all, the split tailgate, I love it on mine. I love the split tailgate on these SUVs because you can use them like a chair to sit on. It's a workbench. It can really be anything. I also appreciate how much space there is still behind the third row seat. There's 11.1 cubic feet of volume with the third row seat up. It's only 2 people that can fit back here. If you fold the third row down, you get about 43 cubic feet of volume, which is extremely usable on a day-to-day scenario. And if you drop all the seats down, this really makes it turn into a van. You get about 85 cubic feet of volume. That's about the same size as a new XC90. So if you're looking at one of these or a newer one, I still vouch to get one of these instead. They're so practical. There's some space underneath the floor here when the third row is up, of course. The battery is also in the trunk, but I really like these things. And in terms of towing, the XC90, doesn't matter which engine you have, can tow 5,000 pounds. But of course, if you have the V8, I mean, you can't tow more. Volvo doesn't say you can tow more, but you can tow more. Another example of this thing kind of having a harder life, I'm trying to get into the third row, and the 2 outboard seats, they slide, well, they fold and they slide for you. This is supposed to do the same thing, but it doesn't want to do it. But I'm gonna try to get in here anyway. And I can get back here, even though you probably can't see me too much because of this seat and because this has a black interior. But the third row of these XC90s is actually pretty accommodating. I can fit back here in mine. I've had grown people fit in the third row of my own XC90, so it definitely is doable. The seats are actually also pretty soft as well, so Volvo did think about third row passengers. There are air vents back here for the 2 third row passengers, thankfully. I'm 5'9", and headroom is pretty decent. I mean, my hair is just brushing up against the ceiling. And then I do have some legroom, but this second row seat does slide forwards and backwards for more space, but I'll get out of here. Things thankfully get nicer and easier in the second row of the XC90. The driver's seat is in my position. I'm 5'9", and I have not the most legroom in the world, but I'm comfortable. I have a decent amount of legroom, maybe 2 inches, and then I can fit my feet under the seat. Because this thing is tall and upright, I have great headroom in the second row seat, and these seats are pretty comfortable as well. There's a decent amount of thigh support and back support for being a second row seat, and 3 of me could fit across very easily. This middle seat also does turn into a child's seat if you want it. This one is stuck, well, I guess it was stuck up because it goes like this. So a kid can, well, a booster seat, a kid can sit here. But it's just some of the things that you can see that this thing lived a kind of hard life before we're looking at it today. But thankfully there's air vents back here. There's also 2 cup holders back here, which are reasonably sized. You could fit some drinks back here, but that's really it. This thing has really seen better days. So we're almost ready to drive this thing. Welcome to the interior of this P2 XC90. We've been in the insides of many XC90s. That sounds weird, but anyways, this is the key for this XC90. It's very similar to all other P2 Volvo keys. For people that don't know, this yellow button turns on the parking lights and the interior lights when you're coming towards your XC90, but it is a flip key. I like the key because this is the same key on my car pretty much, and because there's no push button start nonsense, you can just put the key in the ignition and we can hear that 3.2 get ready to go. The interiors of these XC90s and a lot of the Volvos of this era are very similar and also very simplistic, just like how newer Volvos are as well. And of course, things feel pretty nice. Soft touch materials on the top side of the door and even on the bottom of the door as well. The dash is a nice soft touch leather material. Like, it feels nice in here. First of all, if we look at the wheel, it's a 3-spoked leather-wrapped wheel. This reminds me of the R-Design wheel that I find on some XC90s, but the horn, very good sounding horn. And on the wheel itself, there's a few buttons on it. The left side, those buttons control cruise control, and the right side, those buttons control audio controls. But on this one, because it's a later year, it has built-in Bluetooth, not the factory or port installed Bluetooth. But behind the steering wheel, you'll find the stock for the lights and such. This also has a trip meter, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. And on the other side of the wheel are the wiper controls, and thankfully on this one, it has the rain sensing wipers. The headlights are automatic on this one, and because it's a later year XC90, it has LED daytime running lights in the front. But anyways, if we look up towards the gauges, they're very simple, just like the ones in mine. You just have a coolant temp gauge, the speedometer, tachometer, and a fuel gauge. There is some more information in the little screen on the bottom left as well, like MPGs, what the traction control system is doing, average speed. It's just a trip computer, but it is very nice to have. Towards the center of the XC90, you can see this one has the standard head unit that you could get in them. Most of them, it looks just like this, but in the executives and some other trim levels, there's different face plates on it to make it look different. Volvos have great sounding audio. There's no infotainment in this car, thankfully, but if you do want a nice screen in your XC90, I still vouch for that Legend head unit. It really transforms the interior of your car. Down below that, you have dual zone climate control, very simple and easy to use in these old Volvos. Underneath that is not much of a row of buttons in this one because it's a lower trim XC90, but this command strip down here, well, command center down here is where all the main toggles for the XC90 will be, and that's how you can tell if it's a more higher optioned XC90 or one like this. Between both seats is the shifter for the 6-speed automatic. It's a great transmission. It's not anything crazy, but it's smooth, it shifts well, and it's pretty reliable, especially if you maintain it. No problem with it. This does have parking sensors, but this one doesn't have a backup camera. Behind that, there's 2 cup holders, which are really decently sized, and there's an aux jack, which it does work, but in these XC90s, the aux jack is so finicky sometimes. And behind that is a center armrest, and because this XC90 is a more normal XC90, it doesn't have the fridge like mine, but it still is soft touch material. Unfortunately, the interior, some higher touch points or high contact points on this interior have worn out quite a bit. Now, the seats in XC90s are always a selling point. I always talk about how nice the seats are, and even in this base XC90, they're still really damn soft and really comfortable. The only thing that I will say about them is, unfortunately, I noticed this with a lot of the black interior P2 Volvos, the leather doesn't wear that well. It seems very rough, and this thing only has 126,000 miles on it. The driver's seat is actually a little bit worse, but we don't know what this thing has been through before us looking at it today. But again, the seats are very comfortable, and both seats offer 8 ways of power adjustment, so you can go up and down in not only the driver's seat, but the passenger seat as well. And these seats are heated, 2 stages, and they both have manual adjusting lumbar. So welcome to my thoughts of the P2 XC90. It's very interesting right off the bat because this is on 18s instead of 19s. This feels a little bit smoother than mine, but I do like the firm, sporty ride of my XC90. So there's a reason that I like these XC90s so much, and it's mainly because of how they drive. There's many other aspects of them that I quite like, but how they drive really means something. And also, even in this 6-cylinder trim, it's very good. Unfortunately, that window is stuck open, but right off the bat, this thing definitely drives a little bit smoother than my XC90, and it's because of the 18s. When you're normally driving these 3.2s, they're very easy. The engine is very quiet. It's very refined. They did a good job with this engine. I mean, and of course, because they put it in so many things. Compared to the V8 under normal acceleration, this still feels pretty good. I don't feel like I'm asking too much out of this thing. This is almost 5,000 pounds, I think about 4,700 pounds. So, I mean, you do feel the difference, but that's when you're really trying to wring the piss out of the engine. The steering has a nice weight to it. These are very easy to drive. Some of these have variable power steering, but I don't think this one has it. XC90s also corner very well too. They're not sporty by nature, but they just grip the road so well, and they still give you a commanding feeling and a sure-footed feeling as you drive them. They feel like big tanks. The brakes feel good too. XC90 brakes are, I would say, better than Toyota SUV brakes, but they're still on the kind of softer side if you're trying to be a little bit more spirited with your driving, but normally no problems with them. Especially these brakes feel pretty decent too. It is a quiet, smooth powertrain. The 6-speed does a great job. This thing does make a suspension noise, but this thing is a wholesale car, so sadly it'll probably end up at, well, some other dealership, and maybe it'll get fixed and resold. This thing takes bumps pretty well too. Of course, because it has slightly smaller wheels and fatter tires, it does take bumps pretty well. Big bumps, not so much, because it still is a unibody with, you know, independent suspension and such. But let's see, since I'm gonna have to pass this guy. That's so annoying. Let's see how the power is. Oh yeah. Sorry that the window is stuck open, or else you would be able to hear it. The 6-cylinder definitely is slower. You can tell, especially when you're winding it out, but it's not that bad. For normal people, it's no slower than something like a Pilot, and then throwing it into corners, it's not, especially in this trim. It sounds good. You can't really hear it because it's actually pretty quiet. And that damn window. But it sounds good. It's very smooth power. No lurching, no surging. The transmission is strong, shifts strong. The only times that I really notice the difference in power is when I'm really more than halfway down on the throttle. But besides that, this thing holds its own pretty well. Let's do another bit of a 20 roll. I mean, it's not slow, but you definitely, to get places like how I get with the V8, you have to be flooring it with this. And with the V8, I'm barely on the gas. So you do notice the power difference, that's for sure. So that, my friends, finally I'm able to show you this 3.2 liter version of the P2 XC90, one of my favorite SUVs that are on the road. I quite like the 3.2. I still like the V8 more because I like how it sounds and I like the power of it, and I just love that it's a V8 in a Volvo, because how often do you see that? But the 3.2 is a great engine as well. It's great at towing. It's great at daily driving. It's pretty reliable. This is really the Swedish Honda Pilot to me. I hope you all enjoyed learning more about the P2 XC90 and seeing me kind of nerd out about these things, because I really quite like them and I really still recommend them, even though they're kind of old cars nowadays. But thanks again to Andy for letting us look at this 3.2 XC90, and I'm gonna go drive this a little bit and then go drive my car. But stay tuned for many more XC90 videos and all types of videos on my channel. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll see you guys later. Bye, peeps.